Hi, I'm Deborah Grove, and you're catching me on a morning when I'm really frustrated because I've spent 4 hours doing a PowerPoint and adding the sound, and then I found out that you can't really add the sound if you use a PowerPoint and move it over. So now I'm going back to doing it the old way, which is you have to look at me instead of my PowerPoint, and I apologize for that. So, the name of the resource for this class, for Hamilton's class, is The Perils of Bad Strategy. And it's based on a book called Good Strategy, Bad Strategy by Richard Rumelt. And he is a professor at UCLA. He's also taught at INSEAD in Switzerland. He has a PhD from Harvard Business School, and he studied decision sciences. So let me just say that this is the beginning of what I found very interesting. He said, bad strategy has many roots, but I'll focus on two here. The inability to choose and template-style planning, filling in the blanks with vision, mission, values, and strategies. And this really hit home to me because I consider myself a strategist, moving from for-profit to nonprofit. And I find that a lot of people that I talk with in the nonprofit world are really stuck in a world that's 20 years old. They have mission, they have values, they have vision, but a lot of times they're not really taking into account the externalities of their environment. They get surprised when funding is cut off, they get surprised when galas don't work, and I think it's because they're focused too much on just filling out all the paperwork, but they're not actually out there observing the world as it's changing. And that's why they're slow to pick up on mobile apps and on engaging younger people by having the kinds of donor software that would work on apps and make a better conversion between Facebook and actually giving. So just to get back to what he says, and that's why it resonated with me, he says, the kernel of good strategy is three things. It's number one, a diagnosis, an explanation of the nature of the challenge. So for example, refugees are starving because distribution channels are broken. That's a very clear diagnosis. It's in one sentence, it's in less than 12 words. Another one is, citizens are starving because graft and corruption are stealing food from the system. Again, very small, it diagnoses exactly what the problem is in less than 20 words. So then, if that's what you understand, then you go to the next step. And the next step is a guiding policy, an overall approach chosen to cope with or overcome the obstacles identified. And so I gave some examples of this in my PowerPoint. Here we are. An example of guiding policy might be commit to being proactive. In other words, don't just talk about it, don't just advocate about it, but actually commit to doing something about it. And then place communications high on your group's priority list. So what I've done in the past with nonprofits where I've consulted with them is I said change the way that you look at social media. Don't think of it as something you do as an add-on. Think of it as the actual essence and very much embedded in the activity. Every time you go to build a house, you know you're going to do 3 2-minute videos there. And that just becomes part of the process. You don't go, if you're working for Habitat for Humanity, you don't go on site with just the hammers and the tools. You go there with the intent of making short videos at the same time. Commit time and staff. Commit time and staff on a monthly, weekly, and a daily basis to specific actions where the results are very narrowly defined within the diagnosis. And number 3, he says coherent actions, steps that are coordinated with one another to support the accomplishments. So for example, he had some coherent actions such as reaching influential people, lawmakers, stakeholders, recruiting more members and volunteers, which is central to my particular interest in botanical gardens, reforming public institutions, which is huge. You know, those are 20-year kinds of goals, but if nobody starts to work at them because it's not even close to being in their diagnosis of the problem, it just doesn't get done. So this is running a little over, and what I want to say is there are only 2 ways for companies to attain long-lasting success, is what Richard Rumelt wrote. And I'm going to say this is true for nonprofits as well. They must either invent their way to it, or they must exploit some change in their environment. Now, if you want to reinvent the way to do it, you have to be somebody like Bill Gates. Bill Gates and Melinda Gates Foundation, they can reinvent how to do things. The rest of us who are working with a lot smaller budgets, we have to exploit some change in the environment. And over the last 3 years, for example, we can see that the people who were best at exploiting the environment were really quick to find new funding models. And those who haven't, they're still struggling. So you can go to strategyland.com, read about him there, and there's a very interesting article about him in The Economist and also in McKinsey. Thank you, and I'm sorry I don't have the PowerPoint. Bye-bye.